The Invisible Man is one of my favorite horror films to have been released in recent memory, and is by far my favorite horror film of the year. It took a story that could have become extremely cheesy and predictable, and somehow was able to do the exact opposite. The majority of modern day horror films are extremely lacking when it comes to this. Almost every scare and plot twist can be seen from a mile away, and therefore many of these films have no suspense, tension, or reason to care about anyone or anything on screen. After a while, seeing so many horror films like that gets tiresome, so when I went to the theater to see the newest adaptation of The Invisible Man, I wasn't expecting much, as Universal's previous attempts at rebooting their famous classic monsters all failed. However, from just the first minute of The Invisible Man, I could tell this was different. 2 hours and 5 minutes later, I was blown away. How so? Well, with a quick spoiler warning here, let's take a deep dive into the film and see why it is the perfect example of how to do modern horror right. One of the worst aspects of many modern-day horror films are the characters which inhabit those films. If they're not making stupidly illogical decisions most of the time, then they're busy being uninteresting and giving us no reason to care about any of them, which makes the scenes that are supposed to be scary tiresome, because there's nobody to be scared for. Now let's take a look at the protagonist of The Invisible Man, Cecilia Cass. Cecilia is a woman who has been the unfortunate victim of a controlling and abusive relationship with Adrian, a billionaire scientist well known for his outstanding work in the field of optics. As we learn later in the film, Cecilia was just someone that Adrian met at a party one night, and she just fell into this relationship. One of the key elements in getting people to genuinely care about a character is giving that character something about him or her that we can relate to or sympathize with. However, that doesn't mean that people who have been in abusive relationships are the only ones who can connect with Cecilia. Relating to this character can be more general than that. Chances are that everyone at some point in their life has felt controlled or manipulated by someone, and therefore can easily sync with and understand Cecilia as a person. By infusing very raw human emotions into her that we can all connect with, we now legitimately care for her and want to see her escape such a situation as we did ourselves in our personal lives. That urge and longing to fight back is something we've all felt, so having a character in an already relatable situation also obtain not only the urge to fight back, but the will to fight back is truly fulfilling. Another major factor in how great of a character Cecilia is the fact that she's not an absolute idiot. Now that's not to say that she doesn't make questionable decisions in the film, because she most certainly does, but she never makes a decision that makes you dislike her or makes her less credible as a character. Geico perfectly portrayed the level of logic most horror protagonists use nowadays.
Let's hide in the attic.
No, in the basement. Why can't we just get in the running car?
Are you crazy? Let's hide behind the chainsaws.
Smart. Yeah, okay.
If you're in a horror movie, you make poor decisions. That's what you do.
This was a good idea. Shh, I'm being quiet. Breathing on me.
With The Invisible Man, it's not really characters making stupid decisions, it's more so the characters overlooking or not thinking of something they could do. For example, when Cecilia finds Adrian's phone in the attic and sees the pictures of her and Sydney in bed that he was taking just the other night, she doesn't think to put the phone in her pocket and show that to James and the police. This is strange because what's torturing her aside from Adrian is the fact that nobody is believing a word she says, and for good reason, but that phone and those pictures are pretty hard evidence. It may not get them to believe that Adrian has found a way to be invisible like Cecilia is claiming, but it would definitely prove that someone was in the house and someone took those pictures. Here's the thing though, you also have to look at the point her character is at thematically. Right before this is when Adrian hit Sydney, but Sydney thought it was Cecilia since, well, Adrian's invisible and Cecilia was the only other visible person in the room. This also led James to believe that Cecilia had hit his daughter and therefore forces him to leave with Sydney to get her somewhere safe from her. This scene also takes place right after Adrian estranged Cecilia from her sister by sending that long and hateful message. My point is, when under such a psychological and emotionally crushing, horrifying situation, people often don't think rationally. Like, at all. When Cecilia is alone in the house, her focus isn't on proving her story to anyone, it's on getting the upper hand on her invisible tormentor, which would not only end the terrifying situation, but also leave full and complete proof that Adrian is still alive and is invisible. Later in the film, when Cecilia is in the mental asylum, and after she found out she was pregnant, which by the way was a really unexpected twist, like in the theater I actually gasped under my breath. Anyway, she uses the pen she swiped earlier to cut her wrist, making Adrian think that she's going to kill herself and therefore kill the baby. But of course she didn't intend for that, she was actually doing it so that Adrian, who she knew was in the room, would stop her, thus revealing where he is so that she could get the upper hand on him. This is pure genius and does a superb job of showing us Cecilia's resourcefulness. She took the sticky tack from the paper on the table, took the pen and hid it above the shower. She had thought this out long before she went back to her cell, and that's just really smart. So long story short, it's really great to have a protagonist who isn't completely logically hopeless. I also just want to point out that aside from the relatability and intelligence that she possesses, Cecilia is also just a really likable person. For example, observe this scene where she surprises James and Sydney as a thank you for letting her stay with them.
Oh, hey, wait, where you at?
Okay.
Okay.
Can we look now? Yes, you can look. Ta-da!
Oh, wow, thanks, see? Wow, that's nice. Look at that.
A ladder?
Excuse you? I know I didn't hear you just say that.
I meant to say thank you.
Uh-huh.
You're welcome. Well, I knew you needed a new one, and that one just, that has to go.
That's so nice of you, see. Thank you so much. That's very sweet of you. Thank you.
I wanted to thank you for, letting me stay here and for taking such good care of me, so. And Sydney can also use ladders to get things like stuff like that. That's so strange. God, I wish you had oh wait, you could totally use the ladder.
To climb up.
Yeah, the ladder's cool.
Okay.
Just pop up
It
here
happened
by
to just
itself.
be here, so it's convenient.
Wow.
What is it?
It has my name on it.
That's weird.
And it looks like your handwriting.
I don't know.
You sure it's weird?
I just got a ladder. So I don't know what. It's a new bank account with your name on it, and I'm gonna put $10,000 in it every month for the rest of the year. I call the account Parsons. You're going to fashion school, kid.
You're going to party?
You're going to Parsons.
Oh my God. Yo, wait, no, we gotta celebrate. We gotta celebrate. No more TV dinners, microwave, nothing.
It's like, I guess we don't have anything at all to celebrate with.
Hey, I don't know why you dancing. You can, because you're not 21.
This is a scene that would have been completely cut out of any other mainstream horror film in recent years, because studios would write it off as a pointless scene that's just meant to pad the runtime, when in fact it allows us to grow closer with all three of them as characters, as they all do the same with each other. This is the type of stuff movies in general need more of, scenes that allow the audience to experience the same emotions and growth that the characters are experiencing, because it lets us become even more attached to them. I know I've been discussing Cecilia for the most part, but I do want to point out that the two main supporting characters are also extremely likable, and the actors infuse their charisma seamlessly with their dialogue to make for a great crew all around. As I've said, normally the protagonist is really stupid and irrational in situations that don't even warrant irrational behavior, but that's not to say that supporting characters aren't just as bad, if not worse, because oftentimes they are. Side characters are normally just there to look pretty and get killed in a really graphic way. Or not, since movie studios nowadays don't want to make R-rated horror films, even though those are more critically and widely successful aside from the box office, because I guess they don't have the, guts. The point is, it's refreshing that the side characters in the film aren't just cardboard cutouts meant to be killed. They actually have a place in the film as people. Also, my comment before is not me implying that a horror movie needs to be rated R and have gore to be scary. I mean, one of my complaints about a lot of horror films is the over-reliance on gore, and one of the scariest films I've ever seen in my entire life is the first Insidious film, and that was PG-13, but it didn't treat itself like a horror film meant for teens. It treated itself like a horror film meant for mature audience members. I mean, even a 13-year-old would have nightmares after seeing this.
I went into Dalton's room. there was something in there with him. It was standing there in the corner.
I dare you to sleep tonight. I'm not going to spend as much time on this part simply because I kind of already covered this, but this isn't as much of a description of what the movie's about, it's more of an analysis of the story in general and why it works so well. One of the biggest reasons this film works is the fact that the plot was updated to be relevant to our current times. It takes certain subjects such as abusive relationships and PTSD and makes them key parts of the story, making the movie as a whole feel within our world today. Not only that, but the fact that there is a scientific explanation for how Adrian can become invisible is also refreshing and just makes it feel more real. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that the invention of an invisibility suit isn't somewhat far-fetched, but having it be a suit rather than some supernatural cause still bases it in realism whether it's probable or not. Without a doubt though, the biggest reason this story works so well is due to its simplicity. Many times when directors have to try to tackle a very complex story with tons of layers and subplots, the film as a whole comes off as convoluted and messy. Whereas The Invisible Man decides to have the film be a simple cat and mouse game with some basic but shocking twists nonetheless. Take a look at the finale of this film, which is one of the best and most satisfying finales I've personally ever seen in a modern day horror film. It's not some big elaborate action set piece or a super intense chase with a booming score. No, it's a dinner table scene in which the protagonist and antagonist sit down and have a conversation. I'm not kidding. Cecilia literally goes to Adrian's house where he has prepared dinner, and they both sit at the table and have a conversation. This is brilliant to me. Not only is it the opposite of what we expect, but it's also extremely well written, as throughout the scene you begin to realize that the tables have turned. That wasn't funny. What I mean is Adrian was the one who had control and power over Cecilia, but as this scene plays out, it becomes clear that the vice versa has taken effect, and now Cecilia is the one who is in control of Adrian. It's even better when you realize that Adrian is still trying to manipulate Cecilia with his words, but since she's onto him, she's able to do the exact same thing right back at him without him even knowing it. The most satisfying moment, however, is when Celia dons the invisible suit, which she hid way earlier in the movie, mind you, and proceeds to, well, let's just say Adrian receives his comeuppance. Also, can we just talk about how awesome it is that Cecilia uses Adrian's signature line right back at him? Like, all throughout the movie, Adrian's word is surprise. From the text message all the way to when he was in the room with her at the mental hospital, and even in this scene when he was trying to manipulate her again. Then, right before Adrian dies...
Surprise.
Not only is this just totally epic in every way, but it also ties in with what I was saying before about Cecilia being the one in control of Adrian now, even down to using his signature line against him. This film also has one of the most shocking and unexpected events that I have ever seen in any film.
I found something that can prove what I'm experiencing. That can prove that Adrian is stalking me. What is it? It's some kind of suit that Adrian has built. And it has cameras and it somehow... What?
This is what this film especially excels at, subverting expectations and taking you off guard in the best way. Aside from that though, thematically, the most intriguing part of this film is Cecilia's constant dilemma of trying not only to prove her story, but also to gain the upper hand when no one else is there to help her. Her character goes on a psychological downward spiral and by the end, kinda snaps. What I took away from this ending is that Cecilia's struggles led her to get her revenge and gain control of someone she hated, but is now mentally broken because of it, because this ending does seem to imply in some way that Cecilia kind of became not so much a villain, but more of an anti-hero. She kills Adrian, stages it as a suicide, lies to her best friend, and also manipulates him successfully into believing that it was a suicide, and lastly, She takes the invisible suit with her, implying that she will use it for something in the near future. Essentially, her pursuit and eventual success in defeating what she hates ultimately led to her more or less becoming that very thing she set out to destroy. And that's just truly great storytelling. With this, I'm going to be discussing the technical aspects of the film. Cinematography, music, production design, etc. This film is shot beautifully, with many shots being satisfyingly symmetrical and others being refreshingly varied in regards to color palette and movement. One of the best examples of camera movement in this film is the hallway fight between the Invisible Man and the security guards. It's almost as if the camera is locked with the people on screen. This is a style that Leigh Whannell, the director, is quite familiar with, as his previous film Upgrade utilized it extensively and to great effect. It's also used in the kitchen fight in the house, once again to great effect. Good cinematography doesn't just mean vibrant colors and a cool angle. Movement is very much part of it. For example, observe this shot towards the beginning of the film. They could have just had it be a lockdown still shot of Cecilia walking into the closet, with the symmetry and vivid lighting being enough to satisfy the eyes. But instead, they slowly pan in with her, still embracing the lighting and symmetry, but also thematically lending to the situation which entirely follows Cecilia. Now, there are many still shots in this film that also work very well. The shot of Cecilia walking away from the bed, standing at the glass, and sitting at the table with Adrian are all brilliantly set up, and make this film visually feel like a big budget Hollywood production. The average budget for a feature film is $100 to $150 million. Want to know the budget of this one? Yep, this film grossed a total of $130,560,852, so against a budget of only $7 million, it literally grossed 18 times its budget. My point here is that despite the film's shoestring budget, it still feels like a $150 million production just due to the cinematography alone. That is a sign of astounding visuals. They matter more than you think. The production design of this film is immaculate. Adrian's multi-million-dollar mansion is pretty much my dream house now, and many of the settings in the film, such as the hospital, really invoke that sense of isolation and paranoia. Even James's house perfectly captured the feel of an average suburban home. What I'm saying is, no location in this film feels like a set. They all feel like real locations in real life that I could go to, and that is to be praised. Now for the score, the music, okay? And before I tell you how I feel about it, let me just play this scene, and I want you to really listen and feel the music playing throughout. The film also combines traditional orchestral film score components with some truly pulse-pounding electro twists. On a technical level, this film is an achievement in my opinion, which is funny because it didn't necessarily do anything incredibly new in regards to its technical craft, but the way in which it put a unique spin on it while also lending it to the narrative is truly great. In the end, The Invisible Man was a massive surprise, largely due to everything I just discussed in this video. I think it is one of the best modern-day horror films ever made, and I'm positive that I will be rewatching it many times in the future, along with showing it to a bunch of my friends who haven't seen it. That's it for now, guys. Please be sure to leave a like, comment, and also subscribe and hit that bell to be notified every time I upload. Also, leave recommendations for other films you would like for me to discuss in this format, as I do quite enjoy it. Thanks so much for watching, guys. It really does mean a lot. I'll see you in the next video, and until then, keep writing, keep shooting, and keep editing.